In this story, we will see a girl whose husband has become paralyzed after an accident. And due to his disability, their love affair turned into a nightmare as he wasn't able to satisfy his wife's physical need. The love that existed between them slowly ended because his wife had started an affair with another man. The story begins with the couple Julia and Cassio. They recently got married and have come to their farmhouse to enjoy their honeymoon. After making love to each other for a few days in the hotel room, they come to the top of the mountain for skydiving. Julia was really scared. She didn't want to jump, so her husband had to jump with his friend instead of his wife. Unfortunately, he has had an accident while jumping from the mountain. And because of this, the lower part of his body became completely paralyzed. Cassio was no longer able to stand on his feet. And due to this accident, Julia's life fell apart. He is brought back to the same farmhouse where he came for his honeymoon. His mother had hired a physiotherapist to take care of her son, who would stay with him all the time to give him therapy. There is also another man doing garden work in this house, who carries Cassio in his lap and takes him from one place to another. On the one hand, Julia was very sad because just a few days after the wedding, her husband became paralyzed. While on the other hand, he is also devastated by this accident, as he was not able to have physical relations with his wife, due to which there was distance in their relationship. He was a writer, so one day he says to his wife that you will stay in your room and I will stay in mine, so that I can write my script, because whenever you're around, I can't concentrate. Julia doesn't like that he's asking her to stay away from him, but it feels right to her to be alone at this time. Julia had no one to talk to anymore, so she goes to her garden to learn more about gardening, and in doing so, becomes his friend. One day when she was sleeping in her room, her husband called her into his room. He said, "I was thinking for some time that I would never be able to have a physical relationship with you in my entire life." He felt very sad when he said this, because he knew that he would never be able to be a father, or give her the pleasure that a wife should get. Julia didn't agree with him, so she started taking off her dress to make love to him. But Cassio closes his eyes and says, "Please don't do this. You know my lower body is completely paralyzed. I can't do anything to satisfy you. Julia, you're embarrassing me." Then she realized that if she even tried to make love to him, it would make him feel embarrassed and humiliated. So she goes away because she didn't want to hurt him. Julia then started playing the piano as she was trying to express her pain. She had no idea that her gardener is also watching her from behind. Deep down, he was the only person who could understand her pain. The next day, Cassio came to her while she was having breakfast. He said, "Look, Julia, now you know very well that I can't give you the child. I want you to have physical relations with another man and become a mother, so that at least we can become parents." Julia was frightened by this idea of Cassio, because she didn't want to have physical relations with anyone other than her husband. Her husband was forcing her to sleep with a stranger, so she walked out of the house in anger. She sees that her old friend has come to meet her, so Julia shared her problem with her friend, that my husband is forcing me to sleep with another man, what should I do? On this she says, "Look, if you sleep with multiple partners in our life, then it's not wrong, especially for a good purpose. I don't think there is a problem if you become a mother by sleeping with someone other than your husband." Suddenly, Julia's husband came here, and they were very happy to see him. Unfortunately, while talking, she mistakenly made fun of his paralyzed body, which made him very upset. So, when she came to talk to him alone, he asked her, "Why did you insulted me? Did you really enjoy?" She says, "What's the big deal in this? Everyone knows that you are paralyzed. There's no point in making fun of it." Still, he felt very insulted, so he slapped on her face in anger. She runs back to her friend, and as soon as Julia's friend saw her, she realizes something is wrong. Both of them were physically involved with each other in college, and their physical relationship was reignited at this very moment because Julia was very hurt. After that, they make love to each other all night in the room. The next morning, she took Julia to the garden to show the gardener. She says, "Look how smart he is. He is really a nice guy, and if you want, then you can have physical relations with him. If you get pregnant by him, you can give that child to your husband." Her friend was serious, but Julia took it as a joke and rejected her proposal. Her friend had to go to New York that day, so Julia is alone once again. She didn't want to talk to her husband, so she called her sister here. She tells her everything, that how her husband slapped her and is forcing her to sleep with another person to have a child. Hearing this, she advises her to end the marriage. Although Julia is heartbroken, she says she will not end her marriage just like that. Even the physiotherapist explained to her that I think it's a good idea. If you start having physical relations with someone else, then you can give the child to your husband. Everyone was forcing Julia to sleep with someone else, but the idea of sleeping with someone for the sake of the child was really disgusting for her. Julia is now very mentally disturbed, so she goes to the gardener to talk. She holds him in her arms and cries a lot. Gardner knew she is upset, so he took her to his room. Here Julia saw a guitar and several poems written on the wall. She understood that this man is a writer as well as a musician, so she asked him to play a romantic music to make her feel better. And while he was playing guitar for Julia, she started thinking that maybe he is the right man to get her pregnant. She was considering this man as her physical partner, so she goes to her husband and said, "If you want me to sleep with someone else and be a mother, then I guess I can try. I will find a man to give you a child." He was really happy to hear this, because now she was finally convinced. Next morning she again goes to the garden, and as soon as she reaches here, she looks into his eyes and starts kissing him. Then they make love to each other in the room. But when she came to her senses after sleeping with him, she felt very embarrassed. Julia didn't want him to think that she slept with him so she could get pregnant. So she says, "Whatever happened between us was nothing but a mistake. This won't happen again, so you better forget about me and never try to get close to me again." He becomes very hurt hearing this, as he feels that she used him only for physical relations. The next morning, as she was going out for a walk, she was surprised to see that he is following her. No matter what she was thinking, she knew she wouldn't be able to control herself when he's around. So Julia lost control of herself and started kissing him. When she returned after making love to him in the woods, Selena looked at her with suspicion as to why it took her so long to return home. That same night, while playing chess, she goes to close the window, but she was surprised to see Julia entering the David's room silently. Now her suspicions had turned into confirmation that she was definitely having an affair with David, and he was the same man she had gone to meet in the woods. Even after knowing all this, she doesn't say anything to her husband. The next morning she told her sister that I'm having physical relations with my gardener. Earlier I only wanted a child, but now I'm in love with him. Her sister explains to her that you should break up with him before this illegitimate relation ruins your marriage. Cassio would never accept a gardener's child. It was as difficult for Julia to forget David as it was for David to forget Julia. David also burns the photo of himself and his wife, which shows that he has forgotten his wife and has truly fallen in love with Julia. The way he was looking at Julia at home made her mother suspicious of him. She knows this gardener is trying to impress her daughter, so she gives him a few days off. And when Julia found out that he had given leave, she went to her mother to talk. Julia asked her why she sent David away. She said that he had gone to his home for a few days, and don't think that I don't know what's going on between you two. My son will never hold his servant's child in his hand. This was really upsetting for Julia, because now she was in love with him. She misses David so much that she goes to his room to sleep for a while, but at midnight David comes back too. Julia knew he came back only for her, so she took him inside and made love to him all night. Meanwhile, we saw that he is recovering due to Selena's treatment and medicines. Eventually the lower part of his body started functioning slowly, but during the treatment he came very close to this girl. And finally, after 2 years of treatment, he once again had physical relations. Not with his wife, but with this girl. This girl was also happy because while taking care of Cassio, she had fallen in love with him. But she was also sad for him that his wife was sleeping with David. So after months of jealousy, she finally told him about his wife's affair with Gardner. And many times I have seen Julia going to his room at midnight. Hearing this, Cassio couldn't control his anger. Meanwhile, David's ex-wife comes to him seeking help, as her lover beat her very brutally. She was pleading him to let her stay in his house just for one night. And when she woke up the next morning, she found Julia's inner on the bed. She angrily asks him, "Who is this girl with whom you are sleeping?" To this David says, "Who you think you are? It doesn't matter who is sleeping with me. You are not my wife. You had come here just to stay for one night." And then he insults her and throws her out of his room. While arguing with his ex-wife, he realizes that Julia is the perfect girl for him. And if he couldn't build up the courage to accept Julia in front of the world, he could never find love in life. So he quit his gardening job and moved to another city to find a better job before proposing to Julia. When Julia learned that he is gone, she also came to her husband and said, "I did what you wanted me to do. I have slept with a man and now I'm carrying his baby, but I have to leave you now because I want to marry that man." To which her husband said, "I didn't want you to have physical relations with a lower-class man. I wanted you to find a respectable man." Leaving her paralyzed husband alone was hurting her, but now she can't live without David. Cassio is also feeling remorse because one wrong decision of his has completely destroyed his marriage. This story ends here. You can watch more videos by clicking the screen. If you really enjoyed our videos, please click on the subscribe button for more romantic stories like this.